Okay, hello AP Psychology students. I know this is a little bit strange. I've actually never done this whole video lecture thing before, and I'm guessing it's not exactly commonplace in any of your other classes, but since I am going to have to be gone for this week, because my sister just had her first baby, so I'm officially an aunt to a little girl named Charlotte. I'm really excited. And I'm going to be in Chicago for a little bit, just kind of helping my sister out. But anyway, since I am going to have to be gone, and time is precious, I didn't want to just have this week be lost in terms of content. So we're gonna carry on. And I hope that you find that the lessons that I have designed and the activities that I have for you to do this week are still useful and productive, even though there will be a little bit less direction from the teacher in the room. So today we're going to talk a little bit about attribution theory, and then you guys will have an opportunity to kind of get into some of the research to get into the more specific aspects of attribution theory. But essentially what we're looking at when we're talking about attribution theory is how can we explain others' behaviors and actions, and also not just other people, but how can we explain our own behavior and actions. Attribution theory applies to both. So when we're talking about attribution theory, we're really asking ourselves what the cause of someone's actions or behaviors are. So, if you're the observer and, let's just say you're a social psychologist analyzing a person or a group's actions, what you're doing there is you're attempting to attribute those actions to particular factors. And there are two kind of broad categories when it comes to attribution theory. One of them is what's called internal attribution. So this is where the action or the behavior or an event, whatever it may be, is considered to have been caused by factors specific to the individual. So this could be things like personality traits, for example. Sometimes this is also called personal attribution. Alternatively, as a social psychologist observing behaviors, you might decide that a particular action or behavior was actually caused by factors in the situation or in the environment that were external to the individual or individuals involved. So this would be external attribution. Sometimes it's called stimulus attribution because the focus there is on stimuli or a particular stimulus in the environment that is causing the actor to behave in a particular way. Put more simply, internal attribution is basically where we blame or credit the individual for their behavior or actions. External attribution is where we blame or credit the situation around the individual, the external environment or situation. There's a couple of concepts that you need to be familiar with related to attribution theory, and one of them is called the self-serving bias. It's also sometimes known as the actor-observer bias. Essentially what this is that humans have a tendency to internally or personally attribute their successes when evaluating oneself, and externally attribute their failures. And the reason for this is likely because we all have a natural tendency to kind of preserve our self-esteem and to protect our ego. So just to give you an example that most of you can probably relate to, you take a test, you do great, and you probably think you're pretty awesome. And not that it's entirely not true or anything like that, sometimes it is true, but we have a tendency to credit ourselves with our successes. We think that we're so smart, we worked really hard, we studied really hard, And we really deserve this because of the actions that we took, and because of something that we did. Alternatively, you could perform really poorly on a test and have a very different reaction. You could attribute your own behavior, your own actions to something very differently. Things in the environment, or things external to you in the situation, such as the teacher. You might decide that, I only did poorly on this test because the teacher is a bad teacher. They didn't teach me what I was tested over. They didn't teach me well. The test was made to be too hard. To review a previous concept, maybe the test wasn't valid. Maybe they weren't testing what they had intended to teach. Or you could get, really dramatic and just kind of decide that the world really hates you and that everybody's out to get you and you're destined to fail. In that case, you're externally attributing your actions because you failed. So that's the self-serving bias. Another concept that is important to know and understand is what's called the fundamental attribution error. This actually has to do when we're evaluating other people rather than ourselves, when we're judging others for their behaviors and actions. And when we're doing that, we tend to actually overemphasize the role of the individual and discount the role of the situation, regardless of if it's a success or a failure. A great example of this that you see in our society is with the homeless. You'll often hear people really kind of blame the individual. So they'll, say things or think things like, well, that person's just lazy. That person needs to get a job. I'm not going to help them. I'm not going to provide them with any assistance, any money, because they're just going to go buy alcohol or drugs with it. They're just choosing to not spend their money on what they need to be spending their money on. And they blame the individual. They think that it's their fault that they're poor and that they're homeless. Whoops, let's go back for a second. In reality, there could be something about the situation that is contributing to that person's homelessness, and there probably is. But we tend to discount that. We don't think about the fact that perhaps this person is a really responsible person, but maybe they lost their job. Maybe they had some sort of medical illness that caused them to not be able to work anymore. There are a lot of situational factors that could be at play that we tend to underemphasize. So we internally attribute when it comes to evaluating others. Okay, so that's just a quick rundown of kind of the basics when it comes to attribution theory. What you guys are going to be doing now is you're going to be taking a look at some research, actually 3 brief pieces of research related to the factors that increase the chances that an observer will attribute an event to external factors, and then also the factors that increase the odds that they'll attribute an event to internal factors. So I want you guys to take a look at the 3 pieces of research. One of them has to do with the Kelly covariational model. And the sub can maybe kind of go ahead and just leave this part of the video up, frozen on the screen, so that you guys can use this graphic organizer, flowchart sort of thing that's up here to kind of help you hopefully understand the first piece of research, particularly when it comes to understanding the difference between consistency and distinctiveness, which is something that is often a point of confusion. The basic difference to remember there is that consistency is, does a person behave consistently like they have behaved in this situation anytime that this specific situation arises. So in the example in the research, you're going to see that Ralph is having some issues with his dad and having friends come over. So not Ralph, but a kid who I don't think has a name is having some some issues with his dad because his dad doesn't want his friend Ralph to come over. So in that case, consistency would be, how does the dad behave any time that this kid wants his friend Ralph to come over? Distinctiveness, on the other hand, is the behavior consistent or different from that person's behavior in other situations that may be similar to the given situation being analyzed, but yet they're different situations. So in the example in the research, rather than, is his dad consistent when it comes to his views towards this guy's friend Ralph, it's more broadly about, well, is the dad always a jerk to all of his friends, or is this a distinct example of him not liking one of this kid's friends, Ralph? Hopefully that was clear and helped clear that up a little bit. And don't worry too much about that if that's not making a ton of sense. It's something that I would say isn't the top priority when it comes to attribution theory, and we can always touch on that when I get back. All right, so go ahead and take a look at that research. Do your best to fill out the T-chart. The sub has been left with the T-chart correctly filled out. If you want to check your answers, to check for understanding, just go ahead and ask them for one of the keys. All right, good luck. Goodbye. Have a great day, guys.